Welcome to MSP Unplugged. I'm your host, Paco LeBron. This is a place to learn how to run your MSP, whether you're a nimble MSP or leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. Let me go ahead and introduce my co host. We have none other than Rick Smith over at Renactus Technology. Rick, how are you?
Feeling good today. Feeling good today. It's a Friday afternoon, Friday morning, excuse me, in cold old New Jersey, but we're making it. Feeling good.
I hear that. I hear that. And we got Corey Kirkendall over at 5K Technical Services. Corey, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, brother. Man, yesterday, man, it was 84. Today is 52. So they trying to kill us down here, but it's all good, man. Trying to stay well.
Well, I will tell you that yesterday was freezing rain and 29 degrees. Um, I think my story will be you want to make sure that you prepare for unplanned work. And I will tell you why you should prepare for unplanned work. So, I go about my day and I think to myself, you know what? It says they're going to rain later tonight and freezing. I should probably put some salt on the sidewalk and the steps and such, but I ran out of salt. So I was like, it's going to be like 35 degrees in the afternoon, 40 degrees. I won't worry about it. So we'll go ahead, move forward. And so come up in the morning, we have street cleaning, so we got to move the cars and all that stuff. And when I tell you that it was a tryout for the Winter Olympics, it was a tryout for the Winter Olympics. And so I myself went ahead and got on that top step, slipped and fell on through on that surfboard and knocked myself out. And so to what I say to that is if you got stuff to do, whether it comes into your business, don't wait till you have an emergency or something comes up and happens. Apparently, it was been scored as a 10 out of 10 for that fall. So, what's even more funnier about this is that throughout the day, so I'm banged up. I got my elbow, I got my wrist, I got my back, all that. And it wasn't until later in the afternoon when I went to a networking event that, for those that may have know him, Jose Torres, who's our videographer and such for when we go on location for our recordings, he said, "You got a ring camera?" I was like, "I do." He's like, "I bet it caught it." And so when I checked the ring footage, sure as heck, it caught me flying down. Great thing. So the gentleman here saw the said video and are laughing hilarity. And yeah, so again, prepare for unplanned work. If you got to do something, you got to do it. You should probably take care of it. But Rick, what do you got for our tip and trick story for this week?
Wow. This has been one of those kind of nothing weeks. And I say that meaning this. I've had some stuff going on one side on the personal side of things, so it's taken a little bit of time away from business. But this is one of those weeks where I talk about health, physical health, mental health all the time. It's really something that's important to me. So I've been really busy handling other things. So that has taken my energy from business side. But I guess my tip is get proper rest. Yesterday, I've been working on some stuff all week, and yesterday I was in the office full day. Had two not webinars, but two video conferences with people, and I'm sitting in my office. The second one, I'm nodding off because I'm exhausted, tired. And then the next thing I know, after I finish this, I go sit on my couch in my office, and not this office, not my home office, but my office. And the next thing I know, it's like 7:45 in the evening. So um, I'll just say this: proper rest is important for your business day. And either last week, I know my tip was if you're going to take the day off, take the day off. But if you're not prepared to go and give it a full day, then take the day off as well. Because I think what I gave yesterday was less than a half day, and I probably would have been better served just being home getting some rest.
Yeah, health is such a big thing, especially trying to, as busy as you are, there's that phrase that a lot of people use where you're burning the candle at both ends.
Mhm.
And again, it's a very serious thing to talk about in our industry. I would actually implore a lot of you, if you have not subscribed, our very own Diana Giles has her own podcast for the health of IT. Definitely go out and subscribe. There's a lot of many great stories for people, mentioning of different avenues of mental, physical, spiritual health, and all of it and above. So definitely a topic that needs to be talked about. It's not talked about a lot. So I definitely say, hey, take consideration of your health. You may think you're fine, but if you hear some of these stories that are on the podcast that she has done, it makes you think twice. You know, that's why we, for first time for our business, is trying to figure out, all right, we're gonna get some company health insurance because it's a dog eat dog world out there. So
Mhm.
we're gonna have to get that figured out. So, but anyway, Corey, what you got any tip story or a tip trick or story for this week?
Yeah, man. First of all, man, I'm glad you're not injured, man. You know, that was a performance there, but glad you're well. Um, I think the biggest cool thing, man, for me, man, is I got an older son, man. He's like 30 years old, and he does animation and filmography out in LA. And so he's up at the New York Fashion Week right now, filming and doing some things, man. So one of the cool part, man, is support what your kids are up to, man, and where it comes from. I remember a long time ago, he was like, man, I didn't want anything to do with technology, none of that IT stuff and everything he does. But everything he does, from shooting the cameras, from animation, is all about computers and IT and things from that perspective. So he has a new appreciation for what we do. And I think I need to charge him, put him on an MSP contract, because, man, he called me a little too much. Uh, but the cool part about that is, man, is definitely support your youngsters as they go out there and do certain things, man, and immerse yourself into their world. I go out and spend time with him, man, just to walk a mile in his shoes, man. It's really cool to see how they grow up and do things. I was supposed to be up there with him in Fashion Week, but it came too fast for us. But he's up there doing it and shooting clips and sending it back. So it's been really cool to see him in his element, and makes me proud of him for sure.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Cool, cool, cool. Well, it's my favorite part of the show, my friends. And we are officially back for TechCon Unplugged. And as I like to say, my favorite phrase is we're officially on the road for TechCon Unplugged. But it's the TechCon Unplugged tour. This year will look a little different. Instead of you coming to us, we're coming to you. 3 cities on 3 dates, with our first stop in Newark, New Jersey, coming in less than a month of the release of this recording. Or the actual city is Elizabeth, if he wants to get technical on this, but Mr. Smith does not know how advertisement works for marketing. But join us on our first live audience podcast, along with MSP roundtables, to discuss what's on your mind to help grow your business. We will be discussing things like AI, operational efficiency, and you may see some guests along the way on this tour, providing you not only value, but my favorite phrase, where the magic happens. And with any TechCon Unplugged, we will be having our own evening social that will continue the conversation. Again, the reimagining of this show is less talking at you and more talking with you. And as we've said in the past, every voice matters. Purchase your ticket at techconunplugged.com, and that ticket purchase will actually get you an annual membership to the new membership portal that will have a variety of content coming here soon. We hope to see you over at Jersey. Again, techconunplugged.com. And we hope to see you there March 7th in Newark, New Jersey, or Elizabeth, New Jersey, for those locals there. All right, everybody.
Yeah, I
Hey,
think
Paco,
that
before you go there, man, I think this is worthy of a challenge here, man. I think it's worthy of a challenge. Is it going to be Chicago, Chi-Town? Is it going to be the Big D? Or is it going to be Elizabeth up there that's going to pull it, man, and see who's going to have the best turnout, right? What do you think about that? What do you think?
I think that's a very good challenge to her. So, as everyone knows, these three respective cities, if you have not heard, it's going to be obviously Newark on March 7th, Chicago June 20th, and ideally Dallas in September. The goal here is who's going to get the good draw out for the audience for our respective cities, right? And
Yeah.
so, me and Corey have been talking about this for a little bit. So, as we all come through on our particular tour stops, it's no coincidence that these cities are our own. So we all have to make sure that we represent. So, you know, I don't know. What do you think we're wagering? Are we thinking about we were gonna give something to the audience that show up there? Are we thinking we got a raffle item? What are we thinking here?
Yeah, I think we can get a little raffle item or something like that, you know, and figure out how we make it happen, man. But we got to make it memorable for us too, right? You know, it's a challenge between us three to make it to where they want to see that. I don't know what that is, man. I think we have to announce that on the next show, but we have to figure out something good and make it happen for sure.
I think I like the idea there. No. So for those of you who are listening, why don't you go ahead and write in, see what you think. What should we be doing for this challenge to represent our respective cities? I think I got a couple ideas. Maybe we'll flush them out. We'll see what some community feedback as we get them. But I think this will be a good, friendly, competitive challenge for each one of us here, and we'll see who brings it home when we get down to the end of this TechCon Unplugged tour. Rick, anything you want to add on to there before we jump
No,
into?
I got an unfair advantage, but I mean no disadvantage because I had the shortest time frame for everyone to know about. But that doesn't mean anything. I'm still gonna win, so it's cool. We're still gonna pack the house in Elizabeth, and the only reason Newark is the big city, of course. I say Elizabeth because I'm not even from New Jersey, but because I live in New Jersey, and couldn't be caught dead saying I'm from New Jersey. I live in New Jersey, but so we're very particular about our towns. It's like 245 towns. They're within like 2 inches of each other, but you're from the town you're in, or you talk about the town you're in and not the town next to it. So that's why I'm always saying Elizabeth. But yes, Newark is the big city. And for those who are curious, it is literally where we're going to be is literally less than 10 minutes from Newark Airport, which is actually in Elizabeth too. But anyway.
So the idea here is that if you want to fly in and take advantage of any of these tour stops, we'd love to have you there. You know, I think it's going to go unsaid, but there may be a chance that Dallas might be our closing big out show. We will see. We'll find out, but we're going to make sure we bring the heat for each one of our location stops.
No doubt.
But again, this is the point for those that have not been able to see us in the previous past on those particular locations that we decided to have for a TechCon Unplugged. This is an opportunity for you to see us there. And again, we're more than open to, as we continue to grow this, if we should be adding more stops, more locations, more cities. Definitely write in info@mspunplugged.com or just shoot us a note on your favorite social media app if you happen to find us there. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on to the topic of this episode: cybersecurity best practices for small businesses. Now, again, this topic was brought to us by the great Corey Kirkendall as we were trying to flush out what do we want to talk about and provide that value to our audience, right? And so, cybersecurity has been a conversation for many, many years. And I think AI has kind of overpowered that conversation quite a bit in recent memory. However, cybersecurity is still that much more important to really get down the basics and really the best practices for not only of what you're going to implement for yourselves, but also what you should be looking into for small businesses. So I'll go ahead and kick it off to Corey to start off, and then we'll kind of dive into that conversation and kind of what we all are doing as far as our best practices and providing that cybersecurity and mitigating risk for our clients moving forward. Corey?
No doubt. Rick, that better?
It's a little. Go on, keep going.
Oh, that little bit, that better from that
Yeah, that's
perspective?
better.
All right. My bad. To make sure that, as an IT, got to make sure my sound is good. I appreciate it, man. This topic is always big, man. It's always big for how you do it, but I always try to kick it, in a little bit different direction. That you have to have your own house in order so that you know what you got to do for what you want to do from your own customer side. What I would say is that if you don't have a framework or some patterns you're doing, whether that's following the NIST framework or following the CIS or whatever you're following, you need to make sure you have something that's in place that allows you to align of what your practices and what you're trying to deploy. And then you want to make sure that you're good, because when you look at this situation is that when cyber attack happen, they can either try to get your one customer or they can come and get you and get all your customers. Right. And so they're pretty smart. They say, hey, man, if I get the MSP, I get 50. I go after one, I get one. So they want to go down that path. So what I would say is make sure that you got good hygiene and things from that perspective for yourself as you start to push that down to your customers and show what that importance is and how it goes down there. And I think, as a tip, if we talk about as we roll that down to our customers, I think you have to stay current on some of the things that are going on right now. Like right now, we're just getting into tax season. And right now, we know that phishing and social engineering schemes are huge right now. So you should be proactively either doing a face-to-face in-person training with them or making sure they got training to ensure that they need to be looking out for those scams and how that things are going on. Because one, hey, they want to hit you on that sense of urgency. Everybody had to have their tax information done by the end of January. So, hey, get it done now. Here's where it goes. And they're pushing those buttons, but then they end up clicking the wrong link. And then boom, now you got a problem, you got a big problem. And remember, that's something that you as an MSP, they chose to allow that in. There's nothing really you can do to protect that because that was done by the human, right? So you're totally vulnerable. Unlike, hey, here's what's going on, or somebody called or doing this thing or clicked on a link because you have the right software in turn. So you got to be educating them and educating everybody on yourself, but also educating your staff of how to take proper precautions and how you handle that event that turns into an incident that could turn into a bigger situation. So the biggest thing here is train. We can protect everybody, but one thing we cannot protect that I'm aware of is the human. We will click. And so you got to constantly stay in front of that and making sure that it is, because you're only stronger as your weakest link. And in most cases, that is the human wanting to click.
Yep. No, I mean, exactly like you mentioned. I think that a lot of us who go into this, don't really think of how should they go about offering these type of services. And I think for
Mhm.
those that either are starting out or have been in the game for so long, they think that, hey, that's security, that's not my jam. That's not what I do. I provide IT services, I do IT support. That's not my thing or whatever. But I would argue on that methodology that if you are running a MSP, a managed service providing business, you have to consider security, whether that is internal or what you're offering to your clients. But oftentimes, your client is going to associate anything IT with you. And
Yep.
so you want to make sure you prepare yourself for that, because in the event that an unnecessary thing were to occur, whether that is a data incident, whether that is malicious activity internally or externally, they're going to come to you. And
Mhm.
you saying, well, that wasn't me, is not really a good conversation piece to have with the client, because you should have been on the forefront educating and trying to understand what they're trying to do in their business and how you can provide them that value, right? Rick, anything you wanted to add on to that as far as getting into trying to figure out best practices and implementing those?
Well, I think one of the things you should do is start with defining what cybersecurity is. And I think one of the mistakes we make sometimes is we think it's just about the tools, right? We think it's just, hey, I'll put XYZ on there that'll protect them from antivirus. I'll put this on there, it'll be an EDR. I'll put this on there, it'll protect their email. Cybersecurity is more than that. And then Corey started about when he talked about a framework, right? That is a true that's cybersecurity. That is how you're going to define your, excuse me, know what your assets are, how you're protecting them. It goes back to the training. We talk about training, right? So I use this term a lot now, and I've realized that it's accurate. It's also a live process, right? It's an evolving process. Your clients, well, first and foremost, let's start at home, right? For you and your employees, you should be, the quote says, eating your own dog food. So what you're giving to your clients, you should be using. You should be using it to its fullest extent. You should be training yourself and your people on what to look out for social engineering, for phishing, for all of these things. You have to know these things as well. Now, so once you get that and you set up how you document, what your framework is, what you're following, it should be first in-house. Then again, as these guys have said, then it goes out. But I think we don't want to get caught up in, hey, if I just put a couple of tools on the computer, if I deploy them when I set up the RMM and deploy those tools, everything's good. It's not. There's the training. You have to make sure, again, you have to have those conversations with business owners, because one of the biggest challenges we get, I've seen that we get, is we'll say to a client, hey, this is part one of this is deploying all of these tools on your system to help protect you. Now, part two is educating you and your people about what to look out for. And that's usually sometimes where the pushback comes from, or where we come up short, because you say, hey, here's a cybersecurity training that we have. Every employee should go through it. Everybody you onboard, you should let us know. So everybody that comes in new, onboard them so they can have this training. What happens? They do other things, right? It's not as important to them. They don't get the relevance of it until something happens. And one of the things we've learned now is, and this is something we implement, if you don't take the whole package, you take none of the package, right? It's the whole thing. Because again, if I told you, hey, I put all these tools on there, this is step one, this is part A, or step one. Step two is now you guys understanding what your role into this is. And then, step three is the continuous education of all of that. If you don't do step two, and I don't follow up on step two, when something goes wrong, you're going to blame me for step two, right? You're going to blame me for what happened. And we don't operate that way. So if you don't want to take the whole package, we will continuously monitor and tell you, hey, you have this many employees who didn't finish the training. You have this many employees who are ignoring this or ignoring that. You want to protect yourself and document it. Again, no matter how many times you say it to you blue in the face, you email it, you whatever, you touch it, you own it, they're blaming you for it. So you have to this comes back to that. The other big lesson I've learned is to say no. If you're not going to take the whole thing, then I'm sorry, we can't do business together, because what you're protecting is not only them, but you're protecting yourself as well. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind.
Yo, Rick, I think you hit it right on the head, man. I define cybersecurity as the risk that the customer is willing to accept, right? And that could be, hey, I'm gonna get a cybersecurity policy, and I don't care about tools or anything else. And if something happens, I'm gonna go that way. Hey, that's their posture. That's what they want to do, but that's just not my client. Right. And what you said, something was really key. And this is something that, it's a maturity level of an MSP. It's where it is. And from a perspective is that if you're not willing to take my recommendations and do what I need to do, I'm willing to walk away from you as a client, right? You're not going to be a client of mine. I love that, because what you're saying is that I cannot care about your cybersecurity, your policy, and your data more than you, because we're both at risk from this perspective. And man, that is gigantic, man. That is huge, because I think that's a posture that all of us should take, because at the end of the day, if you don't have that mentality, you're right. It's going to roll downhill, man. It's going to come hard at you, because they're going to click something, going to do something, going to have something. They're assuming that you're doing all the things that that the security imposter net is, and that's just not a true statement in most cases. I love that, man.
Yeah, and then even on the flip side, right? If you're that MSP that says, yeah, that's fine and dandy, but I don't have the confidence to say, hey, this is why you need to do it, because you haven't gotten your own house in order, or hey, you need to do this because I know I keep eating crap sandwiches from this client, because there may be other avenues that you can kind of see those flags that they may not be a good fit for you, whether it is adopting your policies, engaging with you, understanding the shared responsibility matrix and things of that nature. So, for those that are really just trying to figure it out, right? And we've talked about, what our best practices, for us, we had to figure out what type of baseline you want to run through, right? And by having that baseline, that will help provide you the foundation that you can really then focus and say, hey, this is the framework. This is our foundation. This is what our business offers. If you can't align, as Rick mentioned, we don't align as a client and partner vendor. Client and MSP partnership is not going to work in this route. So for us specifically, and I'll go through all three of us of what we're doing. So when we were trying to figure ourselves out and trying to figure out, all right, well, we know we need something, because we're just kind of, as Rick was mentioning, like buying this tool here. This is what we need. All right, we got spam filtering, we got whatever. But are we, quote unquote, checking the boxes to ensure that we are mitigating risk, right? And for us, where we landed was we're currently doing the CIS version 8.1 framework here at Prodigy Techs. Now, what does that mean? So there's 18 controls inside of that specific framework. And that's what's known as for our best practices. And it goes down the list for us of saying, managing inventory, all the way down to, are you ensuring that there's training that's involved for the client? And so from what we did is, from those best practices, we then kind of grabbed all the tools. We figured out what can, quote unquote, check each of these boxes off, and then what is our now offering to our clients. And so what we've decided to do, at least on our end, is we have the good, better, best, quote unquote, packages, but they are aligned with this CIS framework. So what those who are familiar with the framework of implementation group 1, IG1, IG2, and IG3, that is what our plans are adhered to those groups. So our essentials, essentials plus, and then essentials custom aligns with what is quote unquote required for those particular implementation groups of that CIS framework. Now we were on to the races. We now had a foundation. We understood what to apply for. Now it's basically open for interpretation of what these particular controls are. Now, this is where, for you as the MSP, would want to leverage a colleague, a well-known knowledge expert to explain to you how to achieve some of these items. There are times that vendors will be able to fulfill this need as well, but understand, if you don't have a good vendor partner, which in the previous episode you should check out of how we describe good vendor partners, is, are you checking the box because it helps them sell a widget, which then allows you to adopt the widget, or is it actually truly helping you move forward with your business? So being able to understand and speak to some that are either regional, like-minded MSPs, it allows you to understand, okay, I got an idea of what version, what control 18 means. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and start doing my own research to apply a tool or apply a system. And that's how you start to grow, right? Being able to put something in place, it may not be perfect, but if you have something in place and it's documented, will go so much further than you just saying, I didn't get it done yet, I'll get to it. Having the show, as Rick mentioned, as a live process will continue to help you grow as you adopt the individual items of this best practice. And for us, that's CIS version 8. Corey, what are you using as far as your framework? What's your best practice? And then why don't you go into why you decided to adopt it, and then how you're offering that?
Yeah, we started out with CIS version 8 as well, but we kind of got a mixture. We're actually going through the GTIA trust mark right now from a cybersecurity perspective that's designed for MSPs of how you protect your house, and you pull that down to your customers. So they're looking at all of those things. We follow some of the controls of NIST, some of the controls of CIS, some controls of some other stuff, and it's kind of put together to really drill down to how MSPs do it and where they want to go. And what's cool about this is that doing something is better than doing nothing. And that true thing of those who fail to plan to fail, that's a true deal, because you're showing that I'm doing due diligence. The real thing about it is, because we work with a lot of law firms and we hear this a lot, if you understand and know, because we are no longer ignorant of all the things that are happening in the cyber world out there, if you choose to do nothing, what your dad is called gross negligence, right? That means that 100%, and I chose not to do anything. And that is not a place where you want to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is that you're doing something to go towards that path and making sure it goes. But what's really key about this is, I'll tell you, it's not easy. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It needs somebody dedicated to do that, and you document that. But one thing that it does do for you, it's almost like giving you a superpower. And you put it into your marketing and you do certain things, because at the end of the day, now you can stand up and truly sell your customer or potential customers of what you are doing to truly have a plan and a structure in place to be able to show how you protect, and use that from a marketing perspective. Because now when that next MSP comes behind you, the first thing that customer is going to ask you is, what framework do you support? What do you do? How do you protect? And that puts you at an advantage. But you need to make sure you're doing that as well. And so that's kind of what we did, and how we went down that path and go down. But as you go through all these frameworks, what you'll find out, none of them is going to tell you to go get tool A or tool B or do this or how it's there. It gives you an idea, says you need to protect X from X. Now, how you interpret that can be different from all three of us on this call, all the three of us here, and everybody who listens to this show. That's why Paco said, hey, sit down and talk to other MSPs to talk about, hey, how did you read this? What did I interpret this? And typically what's funny about this, we sit down with our good friend Matt Lee, it's usually the first 3 to 5 words that tells you exactly what it is, but you end up on the 18th word, and now you're rabbit holing down a path that you didn't want to get into. And that's why it's key to read it, think about it, then move forward. But I think the hardest thing that I had to deal with is the inventory and asset management piece.
Yeah.
You cannot protect what you don't know, right? That's how important that is, and from that perspective. But if you really look down in the tools that we have, we got an RMM, we got Line Guard, we got all this other stuff that's out there. Really chill, really figure out, how are you taking a true inventory of all of the hardware and software that is in a customer's network. And I bring this back is what it allowed us to do as well. It made us really go back and strengthen our onboarding and offboarding policies for not only ourselves of how we bring on clients, how we bring on our employees, but we also trigger that down to how our customers onboard and offboard employees and customers as well. Because if you don't do that in the right way, your asset management inventory is jacked. Plus, you leave a lot of holes open because you didn't clean up what you needed to clean up. And it just rabbit holes down to a place to where there's no way in the world you could provide a level of security or anything to them that you're promising them, because you don't know the environment. It's too unstable for you. But I say just follow framework. For example, Trustmark is out there, CIS is out there, NIST is out there. There's zero trust frameworks. You got to go find something and go figure it out. And the way you do that, reach out to somebody who's already doing it, or have a conversation. And the other MSPs would love to sit down and have a conversation and say, here's where we are, here's what we do. And then you start putting what you need to get together. Again, it's work, and it's hard work. It's tedious work. It's a lot of work, but it is necessary work.
Yep. Consistent work. It's yeah, so there's a lot of things to unpack from what you just said, right? So first things first, right? Like, for Matt Lee, shout out to him. He's one of probably the smartest people I probably have talked to in quite some time. If you get the chance to poke him down and pick his brain, prepare to be there to really absorb what that man said, because
bring your big brain.
The way he thinks of things and how he I can articulate it so well, it always astonishes me that I always learn so much more after I've spoken with him. But I also feel like my brain is just mush because I try to adopt so much of the information that he's bestowed on me. And it's just, I mean, such a smart individual. But I remember him saying a couple things on when you're trying to prove yourself and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing as an MSP. First things first, for all intents and purposes, everyone thinks that we are providing these services, we are providing security. When it all boils down to it, we're doing two things. And what's most important for us? The first thing is, we are specifically trying to ensure that we mitigate risk. We're trying to make our clients as defensible as possible so that their end users do not deem them negligent. And I will say that again. Our job specifically is to ensure that our clients are as defensible as possible across whatever bodies that may come after them, so that they're not deemed negligent by their end users. And so I want you to internalize that, where that hits a small business with that phrase, they will understand what that means. And you can dumb it down, you can put analogies, but that's ultimately what we're doing. We can talk about all the EDRs and IDRs and XDRs and whatever R's and, and try and place all that into, and it's just going to go off from there. But the other part about it that Matt Lee has mentioned is that, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't recall exactly how he put it, but an MSP's main focus is, as a business, like any other business, is profit. And how are you able to ensure that you are providing value, which is oftentimes associated to monetary, on both internally and to your end user? This is where there's this thing that I've always followed, and it's basically saying for the end user, they only care about three things. They either care about increasing their revenue, reducing their cost, or expanding their market share. And so a buddy of mine calls it the holy trinity of sales, but I don't want to be blasphemous, but the point is that these are these three areas, right, that every small business cares about. And profit is in the middle of that. And so being able to understand what the real word of value is, how do you ensure that the client can associate that? And how do you make sure you benefit from that offering as well? But with that, Rick, what are you doing as far as your best practice? What framework are you adopting, if any, and how are you offering that to your end clients?
Well, we're using CIS now. I was for a long time using NIST, and then NIST never, of course, didn't upgrade until after I had switched. But we're CIS. Now, one of the things I think is important to, and I cannot remember, I wish for the life of me I can remember who told me this, but it was at a TechCon 2 years ago. It was the TechCon in New Jersey. We were talking about frameworks and talking about following the policy and interpreting what they all mean. Because again, you guys are absolutely right. You should talk to people, but if you ask the three of us to interpret any piece of the framework in this, we'll give you a slightly different answer, right? Because it's the way we see it and the way it's influenced us. So, but one of the things I'll say as advice is, we are here to make profit, but start with the simple solution. And that's not necessarily the cheapest solution, but start with the simplest solution first to the issue you have. And then once you get that, you can work from that portion. In each one of the steps, you can start with the simplest solution and then expand on that afterwards. So one of the things that I'll say to everybody here is, what you should offer your clients at a minimal is the minimal you would put in your own business. The minimum that you would put in your own business if you're doing it right. And what is right, and that we can sometimes be lazy and cut our own corners sometimes, because we think we just know, right? So, but first and foremost, implement what you would do to protect your own business first, and then whatever that minimum is would be your good, better, best practice, whatever that process is, but that would be your good. And no client should fall below that at any point. That they should fall below that. And if they're not willing to take that, then again, you don't do business with them. But the other part of that is this: we don't need to, we always say that as long as I've been in MSP, I've always heard this term: we don't sell features, we sell benefits, right? We don't sell a product, we sell what it gives you. So a client necessarily does not know. They don't need to know whether you use, antivirus A or EDR B or XDR C. What they need to know is, I'm protecting your internal, external, and your users, right? Your internal network, your external network, and your users. That's my goal, to keep them safe, to reduce your downtime so that you can work and service your customers and not, lose time, money, from those things not working. Now, when you offer a package, the only reason I say, I said in the beginning about if they're not willing to take it, what I mean by that, if they're not willing to follow through with what you've offered them, then it's time to walk away. So you give a full package. They don't know what's in it, but you tell them, hey, part of this is your customers, your employees taking cybersecurity training, right? Taking phishing training, understanding. If they're not willing to follow through on that, then they're not for you. And you have to make sure that your employees, you yourself and your employees, are following through on that as well. But that is how we developed, to make a long story short here, that is how we developed what we were going to do. We followed CIS. We started with the simplest solution first. And then we said, hey, from what we use, does this fit there? Right? So, again, Corey talked about inventory, right? How do you take inventory? And you can't protect what you don't know. So again, when you do your discovery calls, or you have a client on board, whatever it is, there should be something that's always constantly telling you if something new pops up. Because we all have walked into that situation where you go someplace, you say, where does printer come from? Or where does laptop come from? Or, whatever the case may be. Even a TV. Like I just had a client who tried to put a television in a medical office put a television up and they wanted to connect to the Wi-Fi, but they don't have the Wi-Fi password, the main one. They have a guest password. And it's just for that reason, because you don't want things popping up that you can't protect, that you don't know about. So, I would recommend getting a something, a line guard, a Domos, I forgot the other one. Avik, yes. Yeah. Something like that. Even or your RMM. Some RMMs do it now as well, that they constantly scan and will tell you what's coming up. But that is important. It's just, the I guess to sum it up, I'll say this. The simple stuff is what we should focus on first and what's most important. And that is knowing what you're protecting, knowing how you're protecting it, and having the client understand the importance of what, having them understand their role in things. That will save you, a lot of headaches later when, if and when something goes wrong, you have a framework where to start from and how to resolve an issue.
No, yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I think that, really just driving down. And then, Rick, I wanted to ask you, do you still remember the 5, now 6 stages of NIST, if you had to go and rattle them off?
Don't ask. When Corey mentioned it earlier, I was like, wow. And I was trying to think of it, and I cannot right off the top. I know them, but I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
It's so ingrained in my brain because that was the first framework we decided to work on that I remember them quite as day. And then obviously we switched to CIS, which is a lot familiar. But yeah, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, and then now govern with the 2.0 framework as well. Yeah, so again, 5 key areas, allows a lot to be interpreted. It is a framework that is adopted by many government agencies and things of that nature, as one of the standards, and especially a lot of insurance regulatory bodies as well. Not to be confused on the government regulation for, I think it's a DOD, and you can correct me, Corey, is CMMC 2.0. That's more of that specific regulatory framework that those that want to offer follow if they are doing any type of government work or clients that have government work.
So, man, I think you're hitting it on the head. What I'm seeing here is that there's not a one size fits all, right? But you got to go find something you got to get on. And I take it to a point where I believe it's an ethical issue and a due diligence issue that you are following a framework and doing what's right. And you go down that path and making sure, because I live by this philosophy. When one MSP coughs, we all catch the cold. Because what happens, man, if Rick gets hits in New York and one of my customers see that, and because he was using X tool, then it puts me on the defense, because my customer may see that and be like, hey, are you using that tool? Are you that MSP? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? So that means it stops my business from going forward, because I got to go and field all of those calls to figure out what I need to get done. And the same with Paco, right? So those are things that happen. And we all have picked up clients from other MSPs. Right. We all have those things. And when we get that customer involved, it's kind of like a bad breakup, right? It's like, man, you want to sell me some security? That's what the last guy tried to sell me, and it didn't work. It takes about 6 months to a year before you can make any true changes, because the last MSP, kind of got you in that pickle. That's why it's like, you got to go make sure you're doing the right thing and where it comes from. And then my last thing, I'll throw a little trick of how we follow a framework and show that value. What we did, since we started, we picked a situation where we wanted to brand our services and brand 5Ks packages and not follow up what it is. So when we go out there, we actually use a package for our MSP package called 5K Client Care. We have something called 5K Secure, 5K VoIP, 5K Everything. And what it allows us to do is, when we describe it, we describe what we're doing from the framework perspective of how we're securing in the 5K Secure. What you notice is we don't mention what the tools are. We don't mention what that is. Right. And what that allows us to do is, at any given time, as long as I'm priced right and I'm doing the right thing, I can change and move those tools around any way and anytime I want to, without having an impact to the end customer, because they're not tied to, hey, you're using X, or you're using Y, or you're using Z, or you're using what. They're using 5K Secure. And this is what we're doing to protect that. And under our brand, we have the right to move around, pick and choose, and move tools in and out the way we need to. But we're always presenting the value. And it's 100% talking about the value of how we hit that, to show them how we're protecting them, make them defensible, and doing the things that we want to. Makes it very easy to describe that. Because if you go in there and saying, hey, we use tool X for threat hunting, we use this for X or this and that, what you sold them is you sold them a box of Legos and they don't know what it looks like, right?
Yep.
And so now what you got to go in there and do is you brand your services because you're selling your brand and you put it in there. But what you've done is you described it based off the framework that you're doing to show here's all the things we're doing. Here's my training. Here's how we do inventory. Here's how we do asset management. Here's how we do this. Here's how we handle X. And the main thing I will tell you here is that we are in the incident response business because what's happening is it's not if, it's just when. And you need to make sure you have that plan as well, right? To make sure that, hey, we're going to get hit or you're going to get hit, but we're here to get you through that process. And this is how we're able to do that and able to rectify and bring you back closely. And that's what you're really bringing out to them as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Rick, any final words before I start rattling off some good resources for the fine folks tuning in on this episode?
I'm just going to give one quick tip, and this is just what we do. I notice I have some clients that are more curious than others. Some clients could care less what you're using, so they don't explore. Other clients explore. So I had a client who was we were using one product that had a little tray that came up on the bottom of the screen. So they saw that. And then when they didn't see it anymore, it was concerned when we switched out of it. So if you can, at all points, try to eliminate those things that fall into the system tray. You know, it should only be the only link you should have that they should have from you would be if your RMM gives you a system tray icon that you can put in there to reach your portal. So if you can, try to eliminate all of those. It cuts down on confusion. And like Corey said as well, you can move when you want to move and they really don't know the difference. And it's not that you're trying to get over on anything, but the fact of the matter is, for whatever reason, we may need to make some changes. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily impact the customer one way or the other, because they don't know if they really won't care if they use AVA or AVB. But when they see something, they're used to seeing something and they don't see it, that could be an issue. So if you can, either that or white label it, if that's possible, so that it's the consistent, you know, it falls under the consistency of your logo as opposed to something else, so it doesn't confuse them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, white labeling is such a key factor of trying to ensure that you have that on brand, right? And being able to continue to move forward on that piece. And I would even say, if you do have task tray icons, just in general, you should be eliminating as many as you can because that's what's starting up on the system anyway.
Right.
So, and exactly like you said, you know, you should only have one task tray icon. It should be your logo. That's where everyone goes to. And like you said, yeah, there's some curious clients that'll say, hey, why is this red shield on my task tray? Or why is this X? You know, being able to eliminate a lot of those from being deployed will avoid not only confusion, but tickets that come in as well to be able to address some of the confusion as well. But with that, you know, we've talked a lot about frameworks. We've talked about what are our best practices, how we've kind of molded these packages. But the conversation continues. And so this is the purpose of us having that TechCon Unplugged tour. So if you want to carry the conversation more, understand what tools we're using to adhere to those particular levels, controls, and or stages of those frameworks, you got to come to TechCon. We'll be able to talk to you a little bit more freely. We'll have that live podcast in audience, and we'll have a lot more information as well. But from the frameworks that we've discussed today, we've talked about a few. I do want to go ahead and rattle off the URLs for those to listen. We will try to make sure that these are in the show notes as well. So if you're trying to look into the cybersecurity framework of NIST, that is over at nist.gov, head over to the Journey to CSF 2.0. That is the NIST cybersecurity framework. The CIS security framework is going to be over at cissecurity.org. You'll be able to find the information over at the version 8 control from there. We have the GTIA cybersecurity trust mark over at gtia.org. You'll be able to find the trust mark over there in their cybersecurity programs. And then we also have, as we mentioned a little bit, but didn't really go into, which is the DoD's preferred standard, which is the CMMC level 2 certification. And that is over at dodcio.defense.gov, and that should give you some information as well. But again, we're going to try to make sure that we have these in our particular show notes and have a lot of those updates. And curious for you, what are you using? And would love to hear how you're finding success in adopting a framework, and maybe even a contrary belief of why you're not adopting a framework. We'd love to hear that feedback as well. We'd love to continue that conversation, not only in here, but also as we meet down the road as well. With that, thank you for tuning in. Tune in every week. You can catch us on the video podcast, youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button to be notified whenever a new episode is available. You can also take us with you on the go on your favorite podcatcher app. We're on Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, to name a few. And don't forget, we are on the road again to TechCon Unplugged. Go to techconunplugged.com, and we hope to see you there on our first stop, March 7th, in Elizabeth, Newark, New Jersey. Thank you for listening, and we will see you all next time on MSP Unplugged.